Location has been turned off. All right. Do I have anyone? I'm not seeing any. Oh, there it is. Um, can somebody confirm you can hear me?
I can hear you.
Thank you. I, sorry for being late. I'm having trouble. I had trouble logging into my account. And I needed to get my phone and let's see. Before we begin, are there any questions? All right. Am I sharing my screen? I don't think I am. All right, now you should see my screen. I didn't hear if there's any questions, so let's begin. This is my syllabus, and let me show you my website. There are a number of ways you can log into the class. You can use the link I emailed to you. You can also scroll down in the main web page of our class, which I'm showing you here. Once you log into Canvas microbiology for the lab at 2:30, and then scroll down to the Zoom meetings here. I'll open it in a new window. And you should be able to log in here by clicking. Now, why is that saying start? I've already started that. Clicking on the start button there. If you don't see the classes in Zoom, you can hit a link here. Upcoming meetings, personal meetings. There might be a link up here too that you would say something like all my Zoom meetings, and then you'll see this page. Any questions about that? Obviously, you guys are all here, so you didn't have any trouble getting in. I notice I've got 3 emails, so um, let me briefly take a look there to see if anyone's having trouble logging into the class. Stop sharing my screen, and then I'm going to look at my email there. Oh gosh, it's now not showing me my email, so just give me a minute here. You're meeting 2 times per day, once for the lecture and once for the lab. I've actually had 2 students ask me that question, which should be obvious. You signed up for both the lecture and the lab. Uh, all right, we'll film that one. Okay, let's go back to the class. Share my screen. All right. Um, you should take a look at the course website. I've got an announcement right there. I sent out an announcement in the email that had the Zoom meeting links in them as well. You should read both of those. There's the syllabus for today. I'm going to be showing you that we'll talk about that today. And go back now. Oops, shut the wrong one there. Um, if you get trouble and you need student or technical help, I've got a link here for student and technical help. You can let me know if you're having trouble with the website. However, I am not likely to be able to help you. What you need to do is to contact the computer help people and try and get the class working. They're experts at getting the class working, and I'm not a computer person. You can let me know you're having trouble, but like I said, I'm not likely to be able to help you. Like one student in their email sent me they're having trouble with the lockdown browser, and probably what they need to do is change one setting on their computer to get the lockdown browser to work. And the computer help people are experts getting the lockdown browser, that's Responde's lockdown browser, to work on your computer. And so they'll be able to help you change the setting on your computer and then getting it to work. I've only had one student in all the years that I've been teaching online not get Responde's lockdown browser to work. And this student wasn't really making the suggestions I suggested. So I have a feeling she never made the suggestions that the computer help people suggested. So she was the only student I never got the lockdown browser to work, and I have a feeling she just never made the suggestions the computer help people told her to make on her computer. So all the other students have always got the lockdown browser to work on your computer. So get the computer help desk to people to help you get it to work. Usually, every other term, I have one student who has to change a setting on their computer to get the lockdown browser to work. Most of the students have always got the lockdown browser to work on their computer. So, like I said, only every other term I have one student who has trouble. There's a link to modifying your Canvas website so that you'll get notifications when I change the website or something like that. There's a link to my YouTube website. So if you link on it, Firefox cannot open this page. That's because we're trying to open it in Canvas, and Canvas won't allow it to open in Canvas. So you need to, excuse me, pull that up. You need to click on this site there, my YouTube site, and then it'll go to my YouTube site. This is where I'll put the lectures from this term, assuming that I've got them recorded. And if ever you see that I'm not recording, please let me know. Actually, the only way I can tell that I'm recording is that red dot right there. And so if you see that I'm not recording, please let me know and then I'll start recording. Because if I don't record or for some reason the Zoom doesn't work, I won't get the meeting recorded, in which case I can't post the meeting in my YouTube site. So this class is both live, meaning we do meet during Zoom, but if you can't make it, you should be able to go to my YouTube website and then get the lecture. Like here's the lecture from last term, and there's the lab from last term. And I am informed of the students who do, oh, whatever I'm saying, do view the Zoom meetings at my YouTube website, and I can look to see who's attending the class at the moment so that I can determine who's actually determining coming to the website and who's not. And I do note that some students every term they don't watch all or any of the lab meetings, and I'm not going to get after you, but do realize if you do not attend the lab or watch the lab meetings, you're going to be confused on the labs, especially the two major lab projects. And I'm just going to tell you, you need to watch the lab meetings if you want to understand the assignments. And then I will ask you if you have any specific questions after you've watched the session on the main projects. And I'm not going to hold your hand and tell you the entire story again. So you do need to attend the lab sessions, either in the live Zoom meeting or online in my YouTube website. And like I said, this is how you can get to the website. You will need to click on it twice to get to the website because it will not open in Canvas. If you notice here, this is not in Canvas, this is just YouTube. Any question about any of that? All right. Um, there's some information about Zoom. There's the Zoom meeting invites that I sent out to you, and actually there's three of them I sent out to you because that's for the lecture invite, whichever one will get. And then some of you will be meeting in the lab meeting at 2:30, and that's Zoom lab meeting one. And some of you will be registered for the lab at 6:30, and that will be Zoom lab meeting two. You only need to attend one of the lab meetings. Doesn't matter which one you attend, but or watch it online. But I will be meeting twice, just the same as if we were meeting in the classroom. I would have two labs, one at 2:30 and one at 6:30. There's a link to some of my YouTube videos. I've got links on each of the what do you call it? My lab pages for when I'm talking about the lessons, but I put them all here for a link for some of them all together in my YouTube videos. There's some information for biosafety information for students and physicians. This is really more of importance if you're actually coming into an online, I mean, a regular classroom and you're exposed to the microorganisms because we're going to be doing everything online, you will not be exposed to the microorganisms. And so this information is just really for your own information, for your education and information. It's not really important because you do not need to know about the microbes you will be exposed to because you won't be exposed to anything online. And then there's some information about the Respondus lockdown browser and the Respondus monitor. You can click a link on that. And it's good to, make sure your computer has the requirements for the Respondus lockdown browser, meaning your computer is new enough. But and then there's a link to finding out about how the lockdown browser works and some problems for troubleshooting, which I'm going to tell you. You can let me know if you have a problem getting Lockdown Browser to work on your system, but you really need to get technical help. Once you download the Lockdown Browser, you need to open the Lockdown Browser, log into Canvas website in the Lockdown Browser, meaning log into our Canvas web page in the Lockdown Browser. It's a separate browser. Navigate to the exam to get the Lockdown Browser to work, and then take the exam in the Lockdown Browser. If you take the Lockdown Browser in a regular web browser like Mozilla or, I don't know, Internet Explorer, you cannot take the quizzes. They will only run in the Lockdown browser. And you'll get an error message if you take it in the regular um, web browser. All right, let me see if I can get to the rest of the page. Some guidelines for doing the lockdown browser. You can read about that. Um, And then some guidelines for taking a good webcam. You do have to have the camera on your computer or the webcam running to take the exams. Um, You should have a pretty good Wi-Fi system or internet connection. If you have a lousy internet connection, the lockdown browser and the webcam will not run or will not run well, in which case you can always go to Clark College to take your quizzes and just log into the internet at Clark College. Most students have a fairly decent Wi-Fi connection, but to take the exam, you do need a fairly good um, internet connection. And then you should avoid wearing a baseball hat or a brim. You must be able to see your face, or the webcam will not allow you to take the exam. You must be able to have your face in the exam at all times, or the exam will be flagged and get a 0 on it from the respondus monitor, meaning you cannot start the exam, then walk away from your computer, come back to the exam, and finish your exam. You can't do that. You have to be sitting at your computer at all time. You must have the computer at a firm, flat surface. It says don't use your lap, meaning have a, what do you call that, a laptop on your lap or on the bed or some soft surface. Um, you must use a built-in webcam to avoid readjusting the tilt of your screen, and then take the exam in a well-lit room, but avoid backlighting. Let me see how I'm doing here. Good, it's working. Sometimes it doesn't seem to work when I have the light on, and um, this time it's working. All right, you should also shut down all computer programs that you're not using because you don't want them slowing down your computer. In the lockdown browser, and if you're taking an exam, you won't be able to use any other program in your computer, so you might as well shut them down so you have all of your computer resources running the exam. And then Respondus Monitor will ensure that there's no cheating. It will record what you're doing, and if you cheat, I'm probably going to see it. The Respondus Monitor will actually flag you and then will notify me, so I don't even have to view all of the exams, but I will take a look at your environment before or when you've started your exam and take a look at it to make sure everything is correct. Meaning these exams are closed book, closed note, or all of them except for the what's that exam called? The Plagy quiz. You can actually use your notes in the Plagy quiz, but all of the other exams, you cannot use your notes or the book. You cannot use a AI to take the exams, and it will record the exams, so there should be no talking during the exams. Some students like to read the questions out loud. Well, this is the same as taking an exam and a quiz in the classroom. You cannot take the exam and read the questions out loud in the class, and you cannot take it here. If you do read the question, your um, Respondus Monitor will flag the exam and I'll take a look at it. And you cannot read the question out loud because if you do, you could have AI on the side and you can key it to respond to your voice and then give the text message trying to hide the fact that you're using AI. And so I've just decided there's no reading the exam out loud. You can mouth the uh, the exam quietly so your lips are moving, but you cannot state the exam out loud. And if you do, you will get a penalty. And I don't know, the second time you get it, I'll give you a 0 on the exam. So, no reading the exam out loud to help prevent cheating, meaning somebody trying to secretly use an AI and then having the AI text the message to you. Any question about any of that? All right. And like I said, that'll be the same as taking the exam in class. You can't read the questions out loud in the classroom either because it would just be too disruptive. All right. Let's go back to the website. Actually, I can probably go there. I don't need that one. There's a link to the textbook chapters. That's in case the library ran out of the textbook. It only has the first three chapters and then the chapter summaries for all of the chapters. But if you don't have the textbook, here's the first three chapters, and that's just to get you started in the class until the bookstore gets the textbook. And then a link for student discussions. This is something a student gave me for an idea for the students to discuss about the class. I won't ever look at this generally, and I won't make corrections unless somebody has maybe asked a question and a student has given an incorrect answer, and in which case I will take a look at it and say, well, that's not correct, and I'll put up the correct answer. If you want an answer from me, you should email me directly. And let me state that I prefer the Canvas email right here because I get a lot of emails every day at my clark.edu website, and most of them are junk emails. And so if you want a quick answer, please email me at the Canvas email. I'll check the email at least every other day. If you send me to my clark.edu email, I will check it, but I'm only going to check it about twice a week. So it won't be a quick response. So send me your emails in the Canvas email. Anyways, um, to encourage you to use the student discussions, um, I've got a question for you, and that is, would you like Lab 3 and all the other labs graded 2 times, or would you prefer it like Lab 0 and Lab 1, where the assignment is only graded 1 time? In Lab 2, I've got it set up so it will be graded 2 times. So I'm asking you for Lab 3 and all the other labs up to Lab 9, would you like the labs graded 1 time or 2 times? If the lab is graded 2 times, when I grade it the first time, I will only tell you in the first grading what questions you got wrong. I won't give you the answer. And then by next Saturday, you can turn in the lab again for the second grading, in which case I will give you the correct answer if you got the question graded wrong the second time. Any question about any of that? And the second grading will be for full credit. So you will get 2 attempts to get 100% if the lab is graded 2 times. If the lab is graded only 1 time, I'll give you the answer after the first grading. Any questions about any of that? And the question, if you do supply an answer by the due date, I think that's going to be the second Saturday of the term. Let me see if I can get that. You will probably be told what that is, but I'm not told because I'm the instructor. I've got to actually look at it. Yeah, by October 4th, if you give me an answer by October 4th, I'll give you 1 extra credit point for simply using the student discussions. Another good thing to do about student discussions is you can form a studies group study group, and you can do that by asking the question in the student discussions and get people to respond to you, and you can put that in the student discussion. And like I said, you can put anything else you want in the student discussion. This is a space for you guys to use. You can ask questions for other students here. You can, if you're asking a question to me, like I said, send me it in the Canvas email directly. And then you can complain about the class, like you want to complain about your mean instructor. You can do that here. This is your space. And I have the thing shut to have no answers. I mean, it'll be shut down by October 4th. Once I grade that, I'll give you the one extra credit point if you gave an answer on the lab. And by after October 4th, I'll then open it again for students discussion. Any question about any of that? So that's one way you can get an extra credit point. There's actually three ways to get extra credit early in the term. Student discussions. You can take the link on the extra credit picture. I think that's for three extra credit points. Maybe it's four. Three extra credit points by sending a picture of your face. It'll go in my grade book, and I've just discovered that an easy way for me to learn your names is when I see your smiling face next to my grade book when I'm putting in the grades. It'll be an easy way for me to help learn your names. I do want to learn your names, but obviously I haven't learned them yet. And if I see your smiling picture when I'm posting my grades, I will help learn your name. So that's for three extra credit points. No one will ever see this picture. And if you don't have a digital picture, just get someone with the phone to take a picture of you and then have them email it to you, and then you got your digital picture, which you can post in the extra credit picture place here, which I've got a speed grader there. I think you have an upload link for submitting the picture. So that's one way. There's also the extra credit study sheet. You'll get 3 points for sending in your daily log schedule. I think I've got that here. If I can find it. I don't know where it is. Just let me download it. Oop, I've downloaded it before, but so in the first tab, put in your daily schedule. You can be generic, like you can put in family time. You don't have to put something like, I don't know, helping my first grader read, learn to read, something like that. You just put in family time. But you do need to put in your daily schedule on the first tab. On the second tab, sorry, you put in your time studying for microbiology during the week. And obviously, I'll take a look. Like if you put it from 12 o'clock on all days of the week, I'll go back to look here to make sure you're actually free there. And if you're not free, meaning you're actually studying at work, just mention that so that I can make it make sense. I've only had one student who actually was allowed to study at work. But if that's the case, just mention that in your study time. And then log one is for week one, and that is if you're studying for week one. But if you're studying for week two, and it's different from week two, go ahead and put it on log two. And then week three, if it's different for week three from week one and week two, go ahead and put it in week three. I've never had anyone use more than 3 weeks of study schedule, but if you need more, just create more by clicking the button there. I have to enable the editing here. Click the plus button there, and then make another one for week four. Um, if your study schedule is the same for week one, week two, and week three, and obviously you're just estimating here when you're going to study, you don't have to tell me exactly when you're studying. Just tell me when you're planning to study. If it's all going to be the same, all you need is uh, log one, and then just state up here for week one and all other weeks. Any question about any of that? So you get 3 points for the study schedule and then 3 points for your daily schedule. So 7 a.m. if you're sleeping, just put your sleeping. If you're going to work at 8 a.m. or maybe you're eating at 8 a.m., say you're getting ready for the day, and then on 9 a.m. you're taking off to work, something like that. Or taking off to school at 9 a.m. I don't know. Just, you don't need to be specific, but you do need to have your daily schedule filled in for the entire 3 credits. And same for your study schedule. You only need to put your study schedule for microbiology. And if you don't have enough study hours, all I'm going to do is saying you have less study hours than is typically the typical student needs. And if you can't study more, then perhaps you should consider taking this class at a time or a term when you have more time to reserve to study for microbiology. That's all I'll do. You're not going to get a deduction, um, but I will note how many hours you're planning to study. And if it's too little, I'll just give you a warning note. Okay. And that's all you'll get. You will get the full 3 credits, even if you're saying, okay, I'm only going to study from 8 to 9 a.m. Monday morning, 1 hour a week, and that's it, because that's all the time I have to study. If that's the case, that's fine. You'll still get the 3 points. All right. Any question about that? All right. And this is due by, I think, this Saturday. Yep, September 23rd. 27th at 11:59 p.m. There's a few other assignments due at the 27th. That's the next credit assignment. I'll take a look at well, here we go. You need to finish the environmental quiz. Uh, September 27th, 11:59 p.m. You need to finish the plagiarism quiz at September 27th at 11:59 p.m. Before you can take the plagiarism quiz or the environmental quiz, you have to take the avoiding plagiarism tutorial, which is in here. This is actually a tutorial, and I need to look to see that this tutorial still works because my understanding is the library made a new one, and I don't think I have the link to the new one yet. So make sure this actually works. Yeah, this still works. So take the avoiding plagiarism tutorial, and there's start the tutorial quiz there. And the only thing about the avoiding plagiarism tutorial is that it was made years ago before AI was invented. And so I've got a link here for citation and attribution with AI tools, meaning you can use AI in this class. However, if you use AI, you should give credit that you've used AI because If you use AI and you don't give credit, then you are plagiarizing the AI. And like I said, this tutorial was made before AI was invented. So I've got that link there telling you how to give credit. You should give an in-text credit in your document for when you're discussing something that you got the information from AI. And then you should also give in the references of that paper a complete reference for how you got the AI. So there's your in-text citation. So you would have your statement like, I don't know, I went and asked AI how many people in the United States have come down with COVID-19, and I don't know the answer to that, and I don't think anyone knows unless they look it up recently. So you put it in an in-text citation, and you went to OpenAI, uh, 2023. That's where you have the in-text citation. And then at the end of your document, you have the full reference and you have, there it is, OpenAI 2023 Chat GPT version, large language model, and then a link to OpenAI, where you got it from. Any question about any of that? There we go. Come on. Ah, got that in the way. I can't get out of here. All right. Let's just close it down. Uh, I'm taking uh, track of how many students are using AI. And the last I checked, meaning last term, about 50% of your students are using AI. Maybe it's slightly more than 50% now. And AI is becoming more and more using. And like I said, I imagine eventually 100% of the students will be using AI, but at the moment, only about 50% of you are using AI. And I even use AI occasionally when I'm looking up information that I don't know the hand information off the top of my head, or and I don't know where to look for it, and I just use AI to give me the information quickly. So I'm allowing you to use AI, but if you use it, you should state where you got that information from. Otherwise, you are plagiarizing the AI. And obviously, you're taking the plagiarism tutorial and the plagiarism quiz, so that should teach you how to avoid plagiarizing. And there's a guide for APA citation style, which is also done before the AI was um, had come out. Meaning these two links are fairly old. I've got a newer link, which I need to look into to see if it is a plagiarism tutorial that now has AI in it. And I have to look into that because I heard the library has a new link, but I don't have the access to the link. So we're going to use the old link and just use my uh, attribution for AI tools there. Any questions about the avoiding plagiarism tutorial and the plagiarism quiz and the environmental quiz? The environmental quiz, you'll get 1 point for showing me the environment of your environmental quiz, and that's all the question is. Okay, so it's an easy point. It's just to get you to used to showing me the environment. And I probably shouldn't talk about that now. What you need to do is take your laptop or your computer, and you probably aren't going to see this because it's keyed into my face. So I have to be down at the desk here. show me where your computer is sitting, which you may have to actually go like that. I don't know if you can see that because it's keyed into my face. And then show me the environment, complete environment to your left and to the right, which I know it won't show because it will only show me. If you show me that, you'll get an easy 1 point. And I believe I've got the question uh, in there twice. Once it's the environmental check of the respondus monitor. And then the second time, I'm asking you the question in the exam. Later on in the class, all of your quizzes and the final, I will only ask you this question to show me your environment in the first question of the quiz or the exam. If on the environmental quiz you show me your complete environment 2 times, you'll get an extra credit point as well as 1 easy point, assuming you uh, show me your complete environment. Students have a little bit of trouble with that. I realize you may not be able to see your environment, but all you need to do is use your hands if you have a complete monitor. I don't know if you can see this. I think I've got it plugged in, so it might be hard for me to take this down. If you have a monitor that doesn't bend, you're going to have to bend the monitor with your hands. Let me see. Can you guys see this monitor here? I'll put my face besides it. Let me stop sharing my screen and then I can see. Nope, you can't see it. Oh, you can see a little bit of it there. So if you have a monitor, which it's not going to show you. Oh, there we go. You need to bend it down to show me where your computer is sitting, and then you need to move it to the right, which I don't think that'll show well. That's good enough. And then move it to the, I lost it. There we go. Move it to the left to show me your complete desk or table. And I will look for the edge of your desk or table or whatnot so that I can tell if you're showing me the entire area. If you have a real whole computer, which the monitor is built into the computer, you have to move the entire computer. And hopefully not many of you have that. If you do, you might want to lift up the computer, tilt the monitor. If need be, I can always come into Clark College and give the exam to you personally Wednesday night at the same time as we meet for the lecture. Um, I've never had that happen, but I've offered it to students. Nobody's ever taken me up on it. And another thing you can do is simply go into Clark College. They have computers with the uh, Respondus monitor and lockdown browser on them. And you have to let me know because I think there's a switch I need to key in on the exam. But there's computers at Clark College that you can take the exam on, is all I'm saying. And then you can always take your computer to Clark College and then just log into the internet and then take the exam at Clark College. And then you don't have to be exactly at 6 o'clock. You can take the exam anytime you want from, well, let's say midnight to 11:59 p.m. All exams at Clark College, at least the biology department, have to be taken within 24 hours. This is to reduce cheating, and it's not my decision. This was a departmental decision. Um, So you can take the exam from 11:59 p.m. the night before the exam is due to 11:59 p.m. during the exam. If you don't finish by 11:59 p.m., you'll be locked out of the system, meaning the exam will shut down. And if for some reason you miss the exam, as long as you notify me within about a day, I can go in and allow you to take the exam up to 48 hours after the exam is due. After 48 hours, the questions will be showing, in which case you can no longer take that exam. So all exams have to be taken, even if you're sick, even if you're absent. I don't know, even if you had to fly out of the city to, I don't know, your grandparents' funeral or great grandparents' funeral, and then you come back the next day. All exams have to be taken within 48 hours, or else the exam answers will be showing and you may no longer take the exam. Any questions about any of that? All right, close that down. Oh, I need to share my screen. All right, so if you scroll down, we have the general information, which I think I've talked about everything there. I talked about the avoiding plagiarism tutorial. The tutorial must be taken by Saturday. You must get 100% on the plagiarism quiz. If you don't get 100% on the plagiarism quiz, you'll get 0 out of 100 points on the oh, what is that project called? The infectious disease project. So it's a 100-point project. If you don't get 100% on the plagiarism quiz, you get 0 on the infectious disease project. I've only had one student in all the years I taught not get 100% on the plagiarism quiz. You can take this quiz 7 times. After 7 times, you can no longer take the quiz, and you should not guess on taking the plagiarism quiz. You should actually try and learn the answers because after 7 times, it'll shut down. You'll get the same question, although the answers can switch their positions. The questions will not, meaning it'll always be question one, but the answers A, B, C, D, and E can switch positions, but you'll get the same answers and the same questions. And you can take the exam 7 times. And after the 7 times, you must get 100% on the plagiarism quiz, or you won't get any points on the infectious disease project. And I'm going to be strict about the 7 times, so don't guess. You should actually learn the plagiarism material when you're taking the quiz. And let me see. I don't know if the answers are showing. All right, it looks like the answers will be showing, so that should help you too. Make sure that's the case. You should be able to see the answers after each attempt. All right. Any questions about the plagiarism quiz? All right, if you scroll down on the main web page, you'll come to the week one. I've got the lecture information here. That's not supposed to be showing. Give me a minute here. I've got to correct my web page. I forgot that that one's not showing. And I borrowed this from last year to make it for this year, and I forgot to switch something. Oh, that one's not showing. That one's not showing. All right, those are good. All right. So I've got an overview and the objectives of chapter one. If you want to study for the exam, the first place you should study is the objectives, because all of the questions will come from the objectives. Now realize that the objectives are general, like what is a microbe, a microorganism? It's not an easy answer. There's a large number of, what do I call it, species that fall in the what is a microbe? Different species, different kingdoms, different whatever. Mm. This one's actually easier. What is meant by the term pathogenic? Something that is pathogenic is something that causes a disease. And we're going to talk about human disease. So let's say human diseases. And then are most microorganisms pathogenic? That's also an easy question. And we'll talk about those a little bit. But discuss the beneficial role of microbes in recycling nutrients within the ecosystem. That's not a one sentence answer. Okay? So some of them are general, but if you can answer these questions, you have to turn them into, well, I got them into a question. Then you should be doing well on the exam. And then you scroll down. I've got the objectives for chapter 10. We're doing a little bit of chapter 10 with chapter 1, classification of microorganisms. And that's the overview and the objectives. And then I've got the study guide. The study guide is the lecture notes in text format, meaning not in a slide format, but in text format. And chapter 1 is the only one I think I have set out that way, maybe chapter 2 as well. Yep, chapter 2 as well. All the other chapters, I've got it simply all together. The study guide, where the objectives will be in the start, and then the notes will be in the after the objectives. Any question about any of that? I do want you to take your own notes because students learn best from taking their own notes. I don't know why that's the case, and I know that AI now can take notes. However, I do not think that if you use AI to make the notes, that you will get the benefit of taking your own notes. If you simply listen to a lesson, you will actually only learn 10% of the lesson. But if you take notes as well as listen to the lesson, you will actually learn 20% of the lesson, which 20% is not high, but it is 2 times better than if you only listen to the notes. And like I said, it has to do with when you're listening, one part of the brain is doing the listening, and then you're transferring that information over to another part of the brain to do the note taking. And that transferring allows you to learn the material twice as good or better than if you only listen. And I think if you use AI to use the notes, I don't know this for a fact, but I think if you use AI to take the notes for you, you will only learn 10% of the material. Any question about any of that? So I'm encouraging you to take your own notes and then study from your own notes. Studying from your own notes, also students do better when they study from their own notes than they do from studying my notes, for example, or AI notes. I don't know why that's the case, but that is the case, just the way the human brain is designed. And 20% of the material is not good for learning, but like I said, it's twice as good as simply listening to the notes. What you need to do to um, learn the material at 100% is repeatedly study your notes. And how many times do you need to repeat? Anyone have a guess? Think about an Olympic athlete. They're learning a new technique, or somebody who's learning a musical composition for the first time. How many times do they have to repeat it before they learn how to do it? Anyone have a guess? They've actually done these studies on middle school students. Nobody's taking a guess, so I'll tell you. You need to repeat it on average 20 times before you learn the material 100%. Now, obviously, if you are an adult and you really want to learn the material, you can learn it quicker than 20 times, but it's going to take you a number of times to repeat the lesson. So you're listening to it, that's one time. You're then taking your own notes, that's two times. You then need to repeat going over your notes several times in the term. And what you should do is go over your notes within 24 hours. Take quick notes initially, and then go over your notes within 24 hours, the sooner the better, because after 24 hours, your short-term memory will be gone and you will not be able to add to your notes. So you should go over your notes shortly after the lesson within 24 hours so you can add to your notes. Any question about that? All right. And I guess I need to talk about my syllabus a little bit. Let's talk a little bit about the syllabus. I'm not doing too well in the time here. Oh, wait a minute. I'm going to talk about the syllabus in the lecture. So let's stop that now. And I will talk about the syllabus in the lecture. Let me just point out the syllabus. I've got the information about the class at the top of the page. We'll talk about the syllabus in the lecture. But at the end of the syllabus, I've got the schedule for the class. Tentative schedule for fall 2025. It may change, but at the moment, this is the schedule we'll work with. On the leftmost column, I've got the week, September 23rd, starting Tuesday, ending September 27th. Saturday, everything is due on 11:59 p.m. Saturday. So I count Saturday, 27th, the end of the week. And the lecture in the next column, and then the lab in the third column. Now note that lab 00 and lab 01 are due by 8 a.m. Friday. You must have them turned in by 8 a.m. Friday because on Friday I need to go into the web page and take attendance on who is attending the class on Friday and turn it in by 5 p.m. And anyone who's not got lab 00 and lab 01 in by 8 a.m., I will state are not attending the class and they will be dropped from the class. I've got that environmental quiz by 8 a.m. Friday as well. I didn't know that. But the online plagiarism quiz is due at 11:59 p.m. Saturday, 9/27. And then well, we'll talk about that on Thursday. Any question about any of this material? So your lab 00 as well as lab 01 must be turned in by 8 a.m. Friday or you will be dropped from the class. Now let me state, is there any of the three students here who want to get in the class but are not registered for the class? All right, nobody's here. And then Friday, I will drop the students who are not attending. And if any student drops by Friday, I will then, or earlier, I will then allow the three students who said they were going to try and add the class. As long as they're attending, I will add them. Any question about any of that? All right. So let's talk about Lab 00, lab safety training. You can find that by scrolling down to the lab. And there's the module for Lab 00. You can open it up. And there's the worksheet for worksheet for Lab 00. States due September 26th, and it has to be done by 8 a.m. Friday. And you download it there. And let's go ahead and go to the lab. Go ahead and open up the exercises. Oh, didn't get it in time. I think it's that one I want, but I'm not positive. Hmm. I need to highlight these. Maybe. Oops, wrong one. Maybe I should download it here, make sure I get the right one. Well, I don't see a download link. It's on. Oh, there it goes. Nope, that's the wrong one. Close that down. All right. Upon successful completion of this lab, students should be able to, one, distinguish between safe and unsafe laboratory practices, Two, understand where relevant safety equipment is located in the lab. You don't need to know that, but you need to know what the safety equipment is, and then understand how to safely dispose of contaminated materials. Microbiologists are expected to observe a number of safety rules as they may be working with potentially pathogenic microorganisms. While you'll not be actually performing activities in the lab, because everything we'll be doing will be online, you must understand the safety precautions, including wearing proper attire, including a clean lab coat that covers your lap when sitting, meaning the lab coat has to be buttoned. You must wear disposable gloves. You must wear closed-toed shoes, which I don't think that's being shown. Oh, yeah, it is. Goggles when a splash hazard exists. I don't know if that lady is wearing goggles or if those are her eyeglasses. You only need to wear goggles when a splash hazard exists, where something liquid can carry microorganisms into your eye, or you're working with a liquid hazardous chemical which could splash into your eye. Lab coats, goggles, and gloves must be removed before leaving the lab. These items will remain in the lab for the duration of the quarter. Additionally, hands must be washed with soap, and we'll talk about that in a minute. Long hair must be tied back. This lady is wearing a hair net, either in a hair clip or a hair tie or hair net. No food or drink in the lab. No electronics in the lab. Absolutely no personal items are allowed into the main part of the lab, including a cell phone. And that's what we talk about. The main part of the lab is what we call the lab. The area where you walk into the door, I don't know if that's the door there or not, and then the cubby holes, which are next to the door, that region is considered exterior to the lab. So it's inside the lab room, but it's outside the lab. Is that clear to everyone? And then you walk a few feet and then you walk into the lab proper. Anything brought into the lab, main part of the lab, which shouldn't be there, will be confiscated and will only be returned to you after it's soaked in bleach for 15 minutes or put into the autoclave. Either of these will destroy electronics, so obviously don't bring your cell phone into a real microbiology lab. You should keep your area clean and uncluttered. You should disinfect the lab area, your bench, your station where you work. This is actually a picture of our lab. Before you begin work with the microorganisms and after you're done working with the microorganisms, before you leave for the day, you should disinfect the area. Any questions about any of that? So clean up beforehand to make sure there's no microorganism around, and then you clean up at the end and to remove any microorganisms that you may have put on your surface. You discard your waste material in the appropriate receptacles. Regular trash that includes non-sharp objects, no glass, paper, gloves, those go in the regular trash can. Anything that is contaminated goes in the biohazard container, which has an autoclave bag in it. It will be taken out, put into an autoclave, sterilized in the autoclave before it's thrown in the regular trash, which you will never see it in the regular trash because that'll be done. Even if you go in the lab, you never see that because that would be done by the lab personnel. No glass, no sharps in the biohazard container. Contaminated glass test tubes, any glass bottles go in a bin in the back of the lab for discarding, where they will be autoclaved. Or is it washed? Let me think about that. I think they're autoclaved first and then washed, and then they will be put aside for reuse. No, if it's a test tube, it would be washed first and then autoclaved. And then if it's sterile, would be put aside for reuse. So actually, we wash them first and then clean them and then autoclave them. For soiled swabs, slides, and cover slips, we have a separate container for each. You put them in there's usually bleach or some disinfectant in the container that will sterilize the swabs, the slides, and the cover slips. And the slides will be, obviously, they're sterilized in the disinfectant, and then they'll be washed and then reused. The swabs will be discarded in the regular trash, and then the cover slips will be discarded in the broken glass. We do not reuse the cover slips. We do not wash the cover slips. So that's why they have a separate container. The slide container and the cover slip container is in the back of the lab. The swabs, it's also in the back of the lab, but each table has a container for swabs. See if I can find one. I'm not seeing it there or there. For a spill, if you have a spill with um, microbes in it, you should report all spills immediately and then cover the spill with disinfectant, lots of disinfectant. Put paper towel on to wick the disinfectant everywhere. Let it sit for 15 minutes, at least 15 minutes, before you discard it and clean it up. Use extra paper to wipe up the material. If there's broken glass in it, you will pull off the paper, discard the paper, and then pick up the broken glass with the trash. Oh, what do you call that? The broom and the dustbin. Meaning, don't handle broken glass with your fingers. And then put the broken glass in the broken glass container. Everything else should be in the biohazard container. You should keep lids and reagents bottles on while the use. Don't pour chemicals back into containers. Absolutely no mouth pipetting. You should only um, pipette with a pipette aid or a pipette bulb. Don't stick things in your mouth while in the lab. Never leave the Bunsen burner or Bacto incinerator on. When you're done with it, turn off the gas or the Bacto incinerator. Realize that with the Bacto incinerator, it takes 5 minutes to warm up. So after it's cooled down, it'll take 5 minutes to warm up. So usually we leave the Bacto incinerator on until you stop using the Bacto incinerator. And then it takes 5 minutes before it warms up before you can start to use it. So turn it on usually at the start of the lab to get it warming for 5 minutes. When you're using this, what you do is you put your instrument that you want to sterilize, like the loop, in the flame to get it red hot, or put it in the Bacto incinerator. If you look closely right there, the tip of the loop is turning red hot. You need this portion of the loop, the wire portion, also to be red hot. And that's to sterilize it. Then you cool the loop, either by letting it sit for 20 seconds in the air or 30 seconds, or you can cool it by touching a sterile auger plate, for example, and cooling the tip of the loop immediately, and then you can use the loop. You should be familiar with the safety equipment we have in the lab. We have an eye wash station shown here, a fire alarm shown here, a first aid kit, that's that white thing on top there, a fire blanket shown there, the deluge shower shown there, which this you just pull it down and the shower washes. Um, and then a fire extinguisher there. Any question about any of that? I've never had a student use any of this in my labs. I have had a not a student, but a doctor in a lab I was working in actually get something in his eye, and I took him to the eye wash station. The only time I've ever used any of these. And hopefully I'll never need to use any of that. If you use the deluge shower that actually sprays water on the floor, we have a vent to let the water can drain out, but it will get water on the floor, so you don't ever want to pull that unless you actually need it. Any question about that? So that's always in the microbiology lab. You should be familiar with the procedure before you begin the lab. You should pre-lead the relevant lab modules before coming to class. But if you have a doubt, always ask your instructor. All right, so this is the lab uh, procedure for the lab. I've gone through a lot of this. Let's go through, I won't go through it here, but we're going to go through it in the syllabus, the safety requirements for the lab. The lab rules for safety. Safety is of primary importance in the lab. Never take shortcuts which risk the safety and the accuracy of the lab. We won't do that because you won't be really in the lab, but only enrolled microbiology students and staff are permitted in the lab unless authorized by the instructor. All personal items, including books, bags, books, coats, cell phones, must be stored in the cubbyhole, which is not considered inside the lab. The door and the cubbyhole right next to the lab is considered out of the lab. You then walk a few feet, wash your hands in the sink with soap and water, doing it correctly, washing for 20 seconds at least, getting water and soap everywhere. And then dry your hands, go put on your lab coat, button your lab coat, go grab the gloves, put on the gloves. That should happen at the start of the lab. And then when you leave the lab, you should, um, actually, there's something else you should do. Once you get the gloves on, you should then go walk to your lab station where your workbench is, disinfect the area at the start of the lab, and then go ahead and start your lab. And then when you're all done, you should disinfect the workbench where you worked using plenty of disinfectant and paper towels to smear it around. And then when you're done, you first remove the gloves, remove your lab coat, hang up your lab coat in the lab. They're stored in the lab. And the gloves are stored in the lab as well. Uh, and then go walk to where your cubbyhole is. Go walk to the sink, wash your hands, and then walk outside the lab going to the cubbyhole. And then grab your backpack and your coat and whatnot and your personal items. And then you leave through the lab door. Any question about how that procedure happens? So every time you come into the lab, you put your things in the cubbyhole, you walk to the sink, wash your hands, dry your hands, go walk to where your lab coat is stored, put on your lab coat, button your lab coat, put on your gloves, go to where we have the gloves stored, put on the gloves, and then go work to your workbench. And this is safety to prevent you from picking up microorganisms and then taking them home with you. Paper, writing implements will be provided for you, and you have a personal, um, what do you call it, drawer space for you and your partner for storing these items. And anything that comes into the lab, like your notes and your writing instruments, should stay in the lab. Like if you bring in a pen for the lab, it will stay in the lab permanently until it given to the instructor to be either autoclaved or put into a beaker of bleach or disinfectant for 15 minutes, and then you can take it home. And most people, when they bring in the notes, they're just going to leave it in the lab indefinitely. The same if you bring in a pen, you're just going to leave it in the lab indefinitely. If you want it back, it has to be either autoclaved or put into disinfectant for 15 minutes. So how do you take notes when the students actually come into a real lab? What we do is you take your notes using the paper and the writing instruments we have in the lab, and then the notes stay in the lab. What you do is you take a picture of the notes using a computer iPad, mail it to yourself, and then you have access to your notes to take home with you. You can go print it out if you want, but most people just uh, use it digitally. Any question about any of that? If you take your cell phone into the lab, it will be confiscated. You don't get it back until it's been put into disinfectant for 15 minutes or the autoclave for 15 minutes. That will destroy your cell phone. And that'll be true of any prohibited item. You are allowed to take some personal items into the lab if you are wearing them, such as jewelry, a watch, and glasses. Remember I mentioned? Whoop, I'm in the wrong place here. Still the wrong place. Uh, I didn't know if that lady had glasses on or she was wearing goggles. Obviously, she's wearing clothes, shoes. These are personal items which are allowed into the lab. Any questions about any of that? I guess that's it. Oh, and to answer some of the questions here in this lab, you need to look at this picture. Wipe up spilled materials. I don't know if I mentioned about if you have broken glass, you should only handle them with the dustpan and the broom. Or you talk about mouth pipetting. Oh, if you have a cut or sore in your hand, you should wash your hands the normal way, meaning coming to the lab in the normal way. Go wash your hands and then go to the first aid kit and put on a Band-Aid. And then put your glove on over the Band-Aid. And then when you leave, you should wash your hand. You can go grab another Band-Aid if you want. I talked about discarding materials. Just mentioned that anything that has bacteria in it should go in the biohazard container, unless it has glass. If it goes in the glass and it has bacteria in it, just put it in the appropriate bin for glass containers. Like we have a bin for glass pipettes and the glass pipettes generally will be um, washed and then autoclaved and then reused. The same with the glass test tubes. Um, Anything that's not contaminated with bacteria, just throw it in the trash can. And assuming there's no glass in it or a sharp. And we don't use sharps in microbiology, so you shouldn't have any sharps. All right, remember the area where your bags are and the door is considered outside the lab. To enter the lab, you just need to walk a few feet into the lab proper. Any questions about that? You're required to follow the rules. You only need to know the rules for this class, but if you were to go into a real microbiology class, you will be required to follow the rules. All right, let's come to the questions. All right, here's the lab safety sheet, worksheet for Lab 1. Fill in the answers and turn it in by 8 a.m. Friday. Rule 1, in the lab, what do you do? What do you always wear for safety before you enter the lab? This is not directly stated in the lab, but it is shown in the picture. Okay? And then rule 2, after you enter the lab, what 2 items do you put on to keep yourself safe in the lab? Now, here's a point. You do not put the lab coat on both before you enter the lab and after you enter the lab. You only put the lab coat on one time, and you guys have to figure out where that is in rule 1 or rule 2. If you put the answer in both, you're going to get it wrong because you only put the lab coat on one time. So use a little bit of common sense when you're answering these questions. You need to look up the safety data sheet online to what it is, and it will be, we have a lab safety data sheet for each chemical in the lab. Tell me what the safety data sheet describes. Provide at least a phrase for each answer, meaning a one-word answer is unacceptable. You should have an answer that would apply for every chemical. Don't put in something like, I don't know, CO2 is a gas which has to be kept in I don't know, yeah, well, let's say oxygen because that would be something, or anyway, some gas which is in a container, and to use it, you have to turn it on, which then will vent the CO2, and don't tell me anything that's specific to CO2, and that is something like make sure you have plenty of air when you're dispensing the CO2, because if you have too much CO2 in a closed environment, you will only be breathing in CO2 and you won't get enough oxygen, and then you'd eventually pass out. All right. So don't tell me something that's specific to CO2. Tell me something that's specific to each chemical. And it cannot be a one-word answer. And then so you need to go online to find out what a safety data sheet is and then what they describe. And you need to apply 5 rules. Oh, and by the way, each of these asterisks has to be answered. If you remove an asterisk, you're only going to be confusing yourself. You don't confuse me. Like rule 1 has to have 4 answers. So if you remove an asterisk, you're just going to confuse yourself. If you don't supply 4 answers, you're going to get part of the answer wrong. So leave the asterisks in there, and you must fill in each asterisk. Any question about that? All right, name 5 items of safety equipment found in the lab. Rule 5, name 2 items you can take into the lab. You can take some personal items into the lab, so name 2. And then, can you eat and drink in the lab? That would be rule asterisk 3 for rule 5. And then list 1 item of laboratory attire you must wear in the microbiology lab. And then list 1 item belonging to you that is allowed to be brought into a biology lab. And you cannot put a lab coat because you only bring in the lab coat if you buy it. You only bring it into the lab one time. So you have to list 1 item that's belonging to you that can be allowed to be brought into the microbiology lab, to each microbiology lab. And then 4, list 1 item belonging to you that is not allowed in the microbiology lab. And then 5, remind you, submit this by 5 a.m. Friday week one in the lab 00 folder, or you will be dropped from the class. I will use this lab as well as lab 01 for taking attendance for this week. Any questions about the lab? All right, I will be here until 4:30 to help you answer any questions in the lab or answer any other questions. Let me state I need to use the restroom, so I'm going to break away for about 2 minutes before I return. But are there any questions now? All right.
Yeah, I
Go ahead
have
and
a
get started.
question.
Let me state something I forgot to mention. I do not use the chat or the emoticons because I didn't even see somebody asked a question in the chat. And until I um, stop sharing my screen, I can't see that. So if you have a question, you should ask it directly in the class.
Okay,
You only have to attend one of the labs for today. That's correct.
but would it matter which one I would
It
attend
doesn't.
to?
Doesn't matter.
Okay, sounds good. Thank
Okay.
you.
All right. Any other questions? All right. I will be back in about 2 minutes um, to help you with the lab or answer any questions. Um, Also, once all the students log out of the lab, I'm going to log out of the lab. So if you have any questions, make sure you ask before all the students log out of the lab. All right. Any questions? All right. I'll be back in 2 minutes.